Hi everyone, and welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. And today I'm making a tourtiere. Now, tourtiere is a typical French Canadian dish. In fact, it's usually served on Christmas Eve when people go to midnight mass and come home and have tourtiere. But since I'm not French Canadian and I'm not a Roman Catholic, it's August and I'm going to make a tourtiere. My husband and I. Anyway. Let's start this recipe off and get her going here. And a tourtiere is a meat-filled pie. Now the first thing you have is your pie plate. Makes a nice 9-inch pie. So you can either make your own pie crust from scratch, or you can buy the wrapped in plastic ones that are rolled up like a jelly roll. Or you can buy frozen pie crust that already comes in its own foil pie plate. It's much better to bake it in a real pie plate than to use a tin foil one, because when you're picking it up out of the oven, this is going to give you a lot firmer structure to hold on to it than a foil pie plate. And the last thing you want is something like that to do is to collapse on you. Not a good scene at all. Anyway, pie plates are readily available at thrift stores or yard sales, or at baking supply stores, hardware stores, all kinds of places, anywhere that sells basic baking supplies. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is roll out my pie crust, and this one, as I said, is one of those pre-made ones, and they're even already round, and all you have to do is unroll it into your pie plate. Now, you don't have to dock this, you don't have to pre-cook it, nothing. You just want a raw pie crust for your base. So, whether you're doing this from scratch or you are cheating a little bit here and buying a pre-bought one, pre-made, it's all the same when it comes right down to it. Bought-in pie crust like this is actually fairly decent pie crust. So if you're not confident in your own pie crust, or you don't want to go to the trouble of creating a pie crust or a meat pie, feel free to use the commercial kind that are readily available at your local supermarket. Alright, that's it. My pie crust is ready. And now I'm going to start preparing my filling. Now my filling starts out in a pot, because I'm going to cook this on my stove for 20 minutes. And I'm going to start with 1/4 cup of chopped onion, finely chopped onion. See? I don't have to be a chef to chop up an onion. It doesn't have to be, every single piece doesn't have to be super perfect, because you're cooking this for your family. So I'm just going to put this on the stove. I'm going to sweat these onions. That means I'm going to cook them until they're transparent. And then I'm going to be adding a pound, 454 grams, of ground pork. Now this particular package is a mixture 50-50 of ground beef and ground pork, but you can use pure pork if you want to. It's a pork meat pie. Alright, I'll be back in a few minutes when I have these sweated, and then I'll add everything else in here. Alright, my onions are all nicely sweated now, and now I'm going to add my pork beef mixture to my pan here. 1 bay leaf. Okay. 1 bay leaf. If you don't know what a bay leaf is, not sure that I can explain that, but anyway. Add flavor to your cooking. Next up is 1/2 teaspoon of salt. There you go. And if you prefer to use kosher salt or some other kind of salt when you're baking, go for it. And a dash of pepper. Just going to grind some in here. Next up is 1/4 teaspoon of, well, the recipe calls for savory. I'm going to use summer savory. Summer savory is a little bit different than savory, but I prefer it. So I'm changing it up. A dash of cloves. And I'm just going to mix these together. My onions and everything else in here into my meat. There you go, all kind of mixed into my pan. And the final thing I'm going to add here is 1/4 cup of boiling water. And then I'm going to put this on the stove for about 20 minutes and simmer it. And then I'll be back to show you what happens next. And here's my 1/4 cup of boiling water. And don't worry, metric people, when I write this recipe up down below, it'll be in my description box down below, and it will have the metric equivalents included with it. I'm just going to stir this together, and I'll be back in about 20 minutes. And here I am back 20 minutes later with the final step. Now here's my filling that's been simmering away on the stove for 20 minutes. All nice and porky goodness. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fish out this bay leaf, because they never soften up when you cook them and you don't want to crunch into that. So I'll get rid of that. I'm going to put my filling into my prepared pie crust, and then that's going to go into my preheated 425 degree oven for about 30 minutes. And then we'll be having a luscious tourtiere. Let's just dump that right into here. Now my pork isn't particularly fatty, so I'm not going to strain this, drain any extra fat off. But if your pork is particularly fatty and you have a layer of fat on top, you might want to skim that off. Alright, well here's my pie all filled up. And now I'm just going to put the top crust on top and make some vent holes in it. So I'm just going to take my other pie crust here and carefully unroll it over the top. If you leave these out on the counter for a while, it's easier to unroll them. They don't quite, sometimes they break a bit at the end. And if you've had them out on the counter for a while, they don't. Okay, I'm just going to seal my top crust and my bottom crust together here. Fork from the drawer here. Just make sure you seal that really nicely. There's my pie all nicely sealed up, and now I'm just going to make some steam vent holes with my fork. 3 or 4 holes in the top of my pie that let the steam out. And now I'm going to put it in my preheated 425 degree oven for 30 minutes, and I'll be back to show you what my finished pie looks like. And here I am a half an hour later with my tourtiere all fresh and hot out of the oven. Doesn't it look gorgeous? I can't wait to sink a knife and fork into that. Well, I hope you enjoyed my video today, and I hope that you will like, subscribe, leave a comment below, give this recipe a try, and check out some of my other over 135 recipes that I have out there. Tell your friends, and hopefully you'll see something you like in one of my recipes. And come on back and watch me next time on Ruby's Classic Cooking. Bye for now.